Command, this is Recon Unit 7. We have a problem. The voice crackled through the comm system with the kind of tension that usually preceded very bad news. Fleet Admiral Kex Thule of the Zephyrian Dominion paused mid-stride through the bridge of his flagship, his four arms instinctively reaching for the nearest stable surface. In his 300 cycles of military service, he'd learned that when scouts used the word problem, it was time to start drafting evacuation orders. "Define problem, 7, Kex Thule replied, his voice carrying the weary patience of someone who'd been through this dance before. "Well, sir, we've located the human medical facility as ordered. It's a standard field hospital, maybe 20 beds, nothing fancy. But, there's a human outside. Just one. And he's holding a med kit." The bridge fell silent except for the gentle hum of life support systems. Kex Thule felt his primary heart skip a beat while his secondary heart picked up the slack, a evolutionary trait that had served his species well during moments of pure, unadulterated terror. "Repeat that, 7. One human, sir. Standard military fatigues. Medium build, brown hair, looks maybe 30 standard years old. He's just standing there, holding a medical kit. The red and white kind with the cross symbol." Kex Thule closed all four of his eyes and let out a long, slow breath. "7, I need you to listen very carefully. Do not, and I cannot stress this enough, do not engage. Do not approach. Do not even look at him funny. Sir, fall back to minimum safe distance and hold position. I'm calling high command." Now you might be wondering why a fleet admiral with enough firepower to glass a small moon would be intimidated by one human holding what amounted to a fancy first aid kit. Well, buckle up, because this is where things get interesting. See, the thing about humans is that they have this absolutely fascinating relationship with their medical personnel. Most civilized species treat their healers with respect. They're valuable, they're protected, and they're generally kept far away from anything that might shoot back. It's just common sense, really. Humans, however, decided that common sense was more of a suggestion than a rule. Dr. Alex Morrison stood in the dusty courtyard of Field Hospital Charlie 7, medkit in hand, and wondered how exactly his life had led him to this moment. He'd joined the Terran Colonial Medical Corps with dreams of bringing healing to the frontier worlds, maybe writing a few papers on xenobiology, perhaps even discovering a new antibiotic or two. Instead, he was apparently about to become a war crime. "Doc, you might want to get back inside," called Sergeant Rita Kowalski from the hospital's main entrance. "Sensors are picking up movement in the hills. Looks like our purple friends are back." Alex adjusted his grip on the medkit and shook his head. "Still got 3 wounded out there, Rita. The evac shuttle won't be back for another hour, and Private Collins isn't going to make it that long without proper treatment." "The Collins kit is already stable, Doc. You patched him up good. Stable isn't the same as safe." Alex checked his watch. "Besides, what's the worst that could happen? They're just here for intelligence gathering. It's not like they're going to—" That's when the shooting started. The worst part about being a medic in the Terran military, Alex had discovered, wasn't the blood or the screaming, or even the occasional alien parasite trying to burrow through your ear canal. No, the worst part was the way everyone else reacted when things went sideways. Normal people, sensible people, when faced with incoming weapons fire, tend to duck, cover, and generally try to put as much solid matter between themselves and the things that go bang. It's a reasonable response, really. Very logical. Medical personnel, however, had apparently missed that particular day in Common Sense 101. Alex sprinted across the open courtyard toward the perimeter fence, medkit bouncing against his hip, while energy bolts sizzled past his head. In the distance, he could see the heat signature of Zephyrian soldiers, tall, purple, and currently very confused about why this particular human was running toward them instead of away. "Collins!" Alex shouted as he reached the young soldier who'd been caught in the open during the attack. "How we doing, buddy?" Private Collins, all of 19 years old and currently sporting a rather impressive hole in his left shoulder, looked up with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who'd just watched their favorite sports team lose by a single point. "Been better, Doc," Collins managed through gritted teeth. "Maybe been worse too, but I can't remember when." "Well, let's see what we can do about that," Alex said, dropping to his knees beside the private and opening his medkit. Around them, the firefight continued with the sort of enthusiastic violence that made military procurement officers very happy and insurance actuaries very sad. From his position in the hills, Zephyrian Recon Unit 7 watched through high-powered scopes as the human medic worked on his patient. The alien soldiers had stopped shooting, partly because they were professional enough to recognize a non-combatant, but mostly because they'd been specifically briefed about this exact scenario. "Command, the human is now treating wounded personnel in an active combat zone," 7 reported. He's completely ignoring the weapons fire." "Of course he is," came the weary reply from Admiral Kex Thule. "That's what they do. 7, I need you to pull back your units immediately. Sir, we have tactical superiority. One human medic doesn't change. One human medic changes everything. Haven't you read the tactical briefs? The incident reports? The psychological evaluations? 7 paused. I may have skimmed them, sir. Well, allow me to summarize. When a human medic decides someone needs medical attention, nothing, and I mean nothing, will stop them from providing it. Not walls, not weapons, not physics, not common sense, and certainly not enemy fire. They will walk through a plasma bombardment if they think someone on the other side needs a band-aid. But sir, that's impossible. No species would. 7. 2 cycles ago, a human medic named Patterson walked into a Corellian hive ship. A hive ship, 7, armed with nothing but a medkit and a strongly worded letter from the Galactic Medical Association. The Corellians had taken prisoners, and Patterson wanted to check on their health. He spent 6 hours in there, treated 14 different species for various ailments, and when he came out, he handed the Hive Queen a prescription for her chronic joint pain. What happened to the prisoners? The Corellians let them go. They also hired Patterson as their ship's physician. Apparently, he's very good with arthritis. Back on the battlefield, Alex had successfully stabilized Collins and was now faced with a tactical decision. The smart play would be to drag the private back to the hospital, call it a day, and let the Marines handle the shooty bits. It was the sensible thing to do. Unfortunately, Alex had spotted movement in the rocks about 50 meters away. Movement that looked suspiciously like someone else who might need medical attention. Collins, can you make it back to the hospital on your own? Alex asked, helping the private to his feet. Yeah, Doc, I think so. Why? Alex was already reaching for his medkit. Because I think there's someone else out there who needs help. Collins followed Alex's gaze toward the enemy position and his face went pale. Doc, you're not thinking of... The Hippocratic Oath doesn't have a species clause, Collins. The what now? Never mind. Get back to the hospital. That's an order. The thing about humans, as any xenobiologist will tell you, is that they're not particularly impressive from a purely physical standpoint. They're not the strongest, fastest, or most durable species in the galaxy. They don't have natural armor, claws, or the ability to photosynthesize. By all rights, they should have been relegated to the cosmic equivalent of the kids' table eons ago. But humans have one trait that sets them apart from every other species in the known galaxy. They are absolutely, completely, and utterly incapable of minding their own business when someone needs help. This might seem like a minor personality quirk, but when you combine it with their legendary stubbornness, their complete disregard for self-preservation, and their unsettling ability to weaponize anything they can get their hands on, it becomes something approaching a superpower. And medics? Well, medics are the apex predators of human helpfulness. Alex made it about halfway to the Zephyrian position before the shooting stopped entirely. This was either a very good sign or a very bad sign, and given his track record, he was betting on the latter. Human, came a voice from behind the rocks. Human medic, we need to talk. Alex paused, medkit still in hand. Are you injured? No, well, maybe. That is not the point. You need to stop. Stop what? Stop being a medic. Alex blinked. I'm sorry, what? A tall purple figure emerged from behind the rocks, weapon lowered but still held in 2 of his 4 hands. The Zephyrian looked nervous, which was impressive considering his species typically showed emotion by changing the color of their skin. This one was currently a shade of purple that Alex's medical training suggested meant either deeply concerned or about to molt. You are Dr. Alex Morrison, yes? The alien asked. How do you... Never mind. Yes, I'm Dr. Morrison. Are you hurt? No! And please stop asking that! But you said you needed to talk. And usually when people need to talk to a medic, it's because... No! 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 The Zephyrian held up all 4 hands in a gesture of surrender. I am Squad Leader Veltar of the Zephyrian Dominion. I am here to formally request that you cease your medical activities. Alex tilted his head. I'm sorry, you want me to stop being a doctor? In this combat zone, yes. Please, we will even pay you. That's not how this works. What followed was perhaps the most surreal conversation in the history of interstellar warfare. On one side, you had Squad Leader Veltar, a professional soldier with over 50 years of combat experience, trying to explain why his entire unit was terrified of one human with a first aid kit. On the other side, you had Dr. Alex Morrison, who was genuinely confused about why anyone would have a problem with basic medical care. You see, Veltar explained, his skin shifting to a lighter purple that indicated either embarrassment or indigestion. We have standing orders regarding human medical personnel in combat zones. What kind of orders? To avoid them at all costs. To disengage immediately if encountered. To file a formal incident report if we so much as see one. Alex adjusted his grip on the medkit. That seems extreme. Dr. Morrison, are you familiar with the Battle of Kepler 442b? Should I be? Human medic named Dr. Rebecca Walsh. Single-field hospital, treating wounded from both sides of the conflict. When our forces attempted to secure the facility, she convinced our commanding officer to donate blood. Well, he was not wounded. She said his iron levels were low. Alex opened his mouth to respond, then closed it again. Oh, the commanding officer is now a vegetarian. He has also taken up meditation. He sends Dr. Walsh holiday cards. I'm starting to see the problem. That is not the problem, Dr. Morrison. The problem is what happened when the Corellian forces tried to shell the hospital. What happened? She walked out to meet them. With her medkit. She convinced them to stop shooting because the explosions were bad for her patient's recovery. That's actually pretty reasonable. Dr. Morrison, they were in orbit. She somehow convinced them to come down for a house call. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, during which Alex learned about the Terran Medical Corps' growing reputation as the galaxy's most politely aggressive force. There was Dr. Kim, who had ended a 3-year siege by treating the commanding officers on both sides for stress-related ulcers. There was Dr. O'Brien, who had convinced an entire pirate fleet to switch to a high-fiber diet after diagnosing their captain with chronic constipation. And there was Dr. Williams, who had somehow managed to perform surgery on a Quellian queen while she was still in combat, thereby earning the eternal gratitude of a species that communicates primarily through interpretive dance. The point is, Veltar concluded, human medics are persuasive. We prefer dedicated, Alex replied. Dr. Morrison, the last time my unit encountered a human medic, 3 of my soldiers ended up enrolling in nursing school. That's actually kind of sweet. They were career military. 20-year veterans! One of them was up for promotion to... Veltar stopped himself and took a deep breath. The point is, we would very much like to complete our mission without any more of my soldiers discovering they have a calling in the healing arts. Alex considered this. What exactly is your mission? Intelligence gathering. We need to assess the defensive capabilities of this facility. Oh, that's easy. We've got about 30 beds, basic surgical equipment, and a really good coffee maker that Sergeant Kowalski liberated from a supply depot. Our most dangerous weapon is probably the autoclave, and that's only dangerous if you don't know how to use it properly. Veltar blinked. You are just going to tell me? Why wouldn't I? You're not here to attack the hospital, are you? Well, no, but then what's the problem? We're a medical facility. We don't have any strategic value beyond treating wounded people. Which, by the way, we do for anyone who needs it. No questions asked. Anyone? Anyone. That's kind of the point. This was the moment when squad leader Veltar realized he was in serious trouble. Not because of enemy fire or tactical disadvantages, but because the human medic was looking at him with the kind of expression usually reserved for people who'd just discovered a lost puppy in a rainstorm. You know, Alex said thoughtfully, you look a little pale. Well, more pale than usual for a purple person. Are you feeling all right, Doctor? Morrison, please do not... When was the last time you had a full physical? Do Zephyrians need regular checkups? I'm not familiar with your species' medical requirements, but I'd be happy to look them up. Veltar's skin shifted to a deep indigo that indicated pure, unadulterated panic. Dr. Morrison, I am ordering you to stop being concerned about my health. That's not really how concern works. It is an order. From a foreign military officer to a civilian medical professional. I don't think that's legally binding. Dr. Morrison, call me Alex. And seriously, you don't look well. Are you getting enough sleep? Proper nutrition? When was your last blood work done? What happened next would later be recorded in military history as the incident at Field Hospital Charlie 7, though the official reports would significantly understate the actual weirdness of the situation. According to the files, squad leader Veltar of the Zephyrian Dominion voluntarily surrendered to Terran forces after a brief negotiation with medical personnel. The reality was somewhat more complex. Dr. Morrison, Veltar said with the weary patience of someone who'd been arguing with a particularly stubborn piece of medical equipment. I cannot surrender to you. You are a medic. You are non-combatant personnel. Then don't surrender to me, Alex replied reasonably. Just come with me to the hospital so I can run some tests. That skin color change is really concerning me. My skin color is normal. For someone who's stressed and possibly hypertensive, maybe. But I'd like to rule out any underlying conditions. I do not have underlying conditions. That's what everyone says right up until they do. Come on, it'll just take a few minutes. I've got a portable scanner that can do basic diagnostics. I am not going to your hospital. Fine, I'll bring the scanner here. Though I should mention the lighting isn't great for a proper examination. The standoff continued for another hour, during which Alex somehow managed to convince Veltar to sit down, drink some water, and answer a series of questions about his medical history that the Zephyrian squad leader swore were definitely not part of a routine physical examination. By the time backup arrived, both Terran Marines and additional Zephyrian forces, they found the two of them sitting in the shade of a large rock, with Alex taking notes on a datapad while Veltar reluctantly described his symptoms. You see, Alex was saying, that pain in your lower back? That's probably just muscle tension from carrying heavy equipment, but it could also indicate kidney issues. When was your last urinalysis? I am not discussing my urinalysis with an enemy medic. Enemy? I thought we were friends now. We are not friends. But you told me about your childhood digestive issues. That's definitely friend-level information. You said it was relevant to my current symptoms. It is. Everything's connected. That's the beauty of medicine. You can't treat one part of the body without considering the whole system. The arriving forces found themselves in the awkward position of trying to figure out how to handle a situation that wasn't quite a surrender, wasn't quite a medical emergency, and definitely wasn't covered in any of their training manuals. So, said Marine Captain Torres, looking from Alex to Veltar and back again. What exactly is happening here? Dr. Morrison has taken me prisoner, Veltar said miserably. I haven't taken anyone prisoner, Alex protested. I've just been providing medical advice. He will not let me leave until I agree to a full physical examination. That's not true. You can leave whenever you want. I just think it would be medically inadvisable. See? Veltar gestured with all four arms. He is holding me hostage with his medical opinions. Captain Torres rubbed her temples. Doc, please tell me you haven't been interrogating a prisoner. He's not a prisoner. He's a potential patient. And it wasn't an interrogation. It was a medical history. What did you learn? Well, he's been having some digestive issues that could be related to stress. His sleep schedule is completely irregular, and he hasn't had a proper physical in over 3 years. Also, I think he might be developing an ulcer. An ulcer? Classic symptoms. Stomach pain, irregular eating, high-stress job. I've recommended dietary changes and suggested he consider meditation or other stress reduction techniques. Veltar's skin shifted to a resigned shade of purple. He also wants me to cut back on stimulants and increase my intake of leafy vegetables. Because it's good for you. I do not eat leafy vegetables. That's probably part of the problem. The situation was eventually resolved through a combination of diplomatic intervention and medical consultation. Veltar was allowed to return to his unit, but only after agreeing to schedule a proper physical examination with a Zephyrian military physician. Alex provided a detailed list of recommended tests and dietary suggestions, which Veltar accepted with the same enthusiasm most people reserve for tax audits. The intelligence-gathering mission was considered a success, though the Zephyrians' final report noted that the Terran medical facility posed minimal tactical threat but significant risk of unsolicited health advice. 3 weeks later, Alex received a message from Veltar reporting that his digestive issues had improved significantly since implementing the recommended dietary changes. The message also included a formal request for recipes that incorporated more leafy vegetables, along with a complaint that his unit's morale had improved to annoyingly optimistic levels since he'd started the meditation exercises. The incident at Field Hospital Charlie 7 became something of a legend in military circles, though the details varied depending on who was telling the story. Some versions had Alex single-handedly defeating an entire Zephyrian battalion through aggressive preventive care. Others claimed he'd convinced the enemy forces to surrender by threatening them with mandatory annual checkups. The truth, as it often does, fell somewhere in between. So, Sergeant Kowalski said as she found Alex in the hospital's supply room, updating inventory logs. I hear you've been terrorizing the enemy with medical advice. I haven't been terrorizing anyone, Alex replied, making a note about their dwindling supply of antiseptic. I was just being thorough. Thorough enough to convince a squad leader to voluntarily discuss his bathroom habits with a complete stranger. Medical history is important. You can't properly treat someone without understanding their full health picture. Alex, he wasn't your patient. He was an enemy soldier conducting surveillance. He was a person who needed medical attention. The enemy soldier part was just his day job. Rita shook her head. You realize Command is probably going to want to debrief you about this, right? They're calling it a new form of nonviolent conflict resolution. It's not nonviolent conflict resolution, it's just medicine. You convinced an enemy unit to withdraw from the field by making them worry about their health. That's either brilliant psychological warfare or the most aggressively helpful thing I've ever seen. Can't it be both? The real impact of the incident became clear 2 months later, when the Zephyrian Dominion issued new tactical guidelines for encounters with Terran medical personnel. The document, which was later leaked to the galactic press, included the following recommendations. Avoid direct contact with human medical personnel unless absolutely necessary. Do not make eye contact with humans carrying medical equipment. If approached by a human medic, immediately report any symptoms of illness or injury. Under no circumstances should personnel admit to having just a small headache or feeling a little tired. Emergency extraction protocols should be implemented if a human medic begins asking about family medical history. All personnel should ensure their medical records are up to date before deployment to avoid embarrassing questions during potential examinations. The guidelines were met with widespread ridicule from other species, until similar incidents began occurring across the galaxy. The Rigelian Navy reported that their entire Third Fleet had been convinced to participate in a smoking cessation program after an encounter with a human medic who was concerned about their respiratory health. The Centauri Trade Federation noted that their merchant vessels had begun carrying emergency medical supplies after a human doctor had pointed out that their crews were showing signs of vitamin deficiency. Within a year, the Galactic Medical Association had to create a new classification system for what they termed aggressive preventive care incidents. The human medical community, meanwhile, remained baffled by the fuss. "We're just doing our jobs," Dr. Morrison explained to a reporter from the Galactic Health Network. "If someone needs medical attention, we provide it. That's what we do. But don't you think it's unusual to treat enemy soldiers? Enemy soldiers are still people. People get sick, people get injured, people need medical care. The politics of the situation don't change the biology. What about the tactical advantages? Some military analysts suggest that your methods could be used as a form of psychological warfare." Alex looked genuinely confused. "Psychological warfare? We're just trying to keep people healthy. But you've effectively neutralized enemy forces through medical intervention. We've helped people identify and address health issues that were affecting their quality of life. If that happens to make them less inclined to shoot at people, well, that's just a nice side effect." The truth was, Alex had never intended to become a tactical asset. He just wanted to help people, regardless of which side of the conflict they happened to be on. The fact that this approach had proved surprisingly effective at de-escalating military situations was something that still puzzled him. "I mean, it makes sense when you think about it," he explained to Captain Torres during one of their regular coffee meetings. "Most conflicts are driven by fear, anger, and stress. Those are all things that can be addressed through proper medical care and lifestyle changes." "You're saying wars are caused by poor health?" "I'm saying poor health doesn't help. When people are tired, stressed, and in pain, they're more likely to make bad decisions. Address the underlying health issues, and suddenly people are more willing to talk things through." "So your solution to interstellar conflict is better healthcare?" "Among other things, yes. You'd be surprised how many problems can be solved with proper nutrition, adequate sleep, and regular exercise." Torres stared at him. "You're serious?" "Completely. Look at Veltar. Once we addressed his digestive issues and got him on a better sleep schedule, he became much more reasonable. He's actually been sending me progress reports." "Progress reports?" "His ulcer symptoms have completely resolved, and his stress levels are way down. He's even started a meditation group for his unit." "A meditation group?" "Stress reduction is important for military personnel. High-stress environments can lead to all sorts of health problems if not properly managed." Torres rubbed her temples. "Alex, do you realize you've essentially weaponized wellness? I've provided medical care to people who needed it. The fact that healthier people tend to be more rational and less aggressive isn't my fault. It's just biology." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from command. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Zephyrian fleet approaching the system, and all medical facilities were being ordered to prepare for potential casualties. "Looks like we might be getting busy," Torres said, checking her sidearm. Alex was already reaching for his medkit. "I should start prepping the surgical bay." "Alex, if this turns into a full-scale engagement, I need you to promise me you'll stay in the hospital. No running out to treat wounded soldiers in the middle of a firefight." "I can't promise that." "Alex, Rita, if people are hurt, I'm going to help them." "That's what I do. That's what I'm afraid of." The Zephyrian fleet arrived 6 hours later, but instead of the expected orbital bombardment, they transmitted a single message. "Request permission to dock for medical consultation." The message was signed by Fleet Admiral Kex Thule, who had apparently been suffering from chronic back pain for the past several years. He'd heard about Dr. Morrison's success in treating similar conditions and was hoping to schedule an appointment. "You see?" Alex said to Torres as they watched the first shuttle load of Zephyrian officers disembark at the hospital's landing pad. "Most problems really can be solved with proper medical care." "This is insane," Torres muttered. "We're about to provide enemy forces with comprehensive physical examinations. They're not enemy forces, they're patients. And technically we're not at war with the Zephyrian Dominion anymore." "Since when?" "Since Admiral Kexthul signed the non-aggression pact about 20 minutes ago. Apparently he's been looking for an excuse to end hostilities. The back pain was just the last straw." Torres stared at him. "You ended a war with physical therapy?" "I haven't done anything yet. But chronic pain can really affect someone's quality of life. It's no wonder he was making aggressive military decisions. He was probably in discomfort constantly." "So you're saying his bad back made him invade 3-star systems?" "I'm saying chronic pain can affect judgment and decision-making. Address the pain, and suddenly people are more inclined to consider diplomatic solutions." The next few days were some of the busiest in Field Hospital Charlie 7's history. What started as a single medical consultation turned into a comprehensive health assessment for the entire Zephyrian command structure. Alex found himself treating everything from stress-related digestive issues to vitamin deficiencies to chronic fatigue syndrome. "You know," Admiral Kexthul said as Alex worked on his lower back, "I cannot remember the last time I felt this good." "That's what happens when you address the underlying causes instead of just treating the symptoms," Alex replied, adjusting the heat therapy unit. "Your posture has improved significantly since we started the exercises. My staff has noticed. They say I seem more approachable." "Chronic pain can make anyone irritable. You've probably been dealing with low-level discomfort for so long that you forgot what it felt like to be pain-free." "Perhaps. I must admit the meditation techniques have been surprisingly effective. Stress reduction is important for everyone, but especially for people in leadership positions. The decisions you make affect thousands of people. You need to be operating at peak mental and physical condition." Kexthul considered this. "Dr. Morrison, may I ask you something?" "Of course." "Did you plan this?" Alex paused in his work. "Plan what?" "This. The medical intervention. The diplomatic resolution. Did you deliberately use healthcare as a form of conflict resolution?" "Admiral, I saw a person in pain and I offered to help. Everything else just sort of happened." "That is what I was afraid you would say." The signing of the formal peace treaty took place in the hospital's main ward, with Admiral Kexthul representing the Zephyrian Dominion and Captain Torres standing in for Terran Command. The ceremony was witnessed by medical staff from both sides, along with a handful of patients who were too curious to stay in their beds. "You know," Kexthul said as he signed the document, "in all my years of military service, I never imagined I would be negotiating peace terms while wearing a hospital gown." "The gown is optional," Alex pointed out, "but I wanted to finish your examination, and it's easier if you're not wearing all that armor." "Dr. Morrison, I have to ask, do you realize what you have accomplished here?" "I've provided medical care to people who needed it, same as always. You have single-handedly ended a military conflict through aggressive healthcare." "I wouldn't say single-handedly. Sergeant Kowalski helped with the paperwork." Kexthul looked at Captain Torres. "Is he always like this?" "Pretty much," Torres replied. "We've stopped trying to figure out if he's a genius or just really, really committed to his job." "Why can't it be both?" Alex asked. The conversation continued for another few minutes, but Alex's attention was already shifting to his next patient, a young Rigelian who'd been injured in a mining accident. Standard treatment protocol called for wound care and pain management, but Alex had already noticed signs of chronic stress and nutritional deficiencies. There would be questions to ask, problems to solve, people to help. It was, he reflected, exactly what he'd signed up for when he decided to become a doctor. The fact that it had somehow become something larger than that was interesting, but it didn't change the basic reality. People needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. That was really all there was to it. Outside the hospital, ships from dozens of different species moved through the busy space lanes, carrying passengers and cargo, and the occasional medical student eager to learn about Morrison methods. Wars still happened, though less frequently than before. Conflicts still arose, though they were increasingly resolved through dialogue rather than violence. People still got sick and hurt and needed help, though more and more of them were receiving the kind of comprehensive care that addressed root causes rather than just symptoms. The galaxy was changing, slowly but steadily, one patient at a time, one problem at a time, one medkit at a time. And in Field Hospital Charlie 7, Dr. Alex Morrison continued doing what he'd always done, helping people who needed help. Because that's what medics do. Epilogue. From the personal journal of Dr. Alex Morrison, dated 5 years after the Great Medical Intervention. Got a message today from Veltar. His unit has been reassigned to humanitarian relief work, and he wanted to let me know that his stress levels are at an all-time low. He's also gotten married, started a family, and taken up gardening as a hobby. He credits the meditation techniques I taught him for helping him find balance between his professional and personal life. I sent back congratulations and a reminder to keep up with his regular checkups. It's funny how things work out. 5 years ago, I was just trying to treat a wounded soldier in a combat zone. Now apparently I'm some kind of galactic icon for conflict resolution through healthcare. The whole thing still seems surreal. But at the end of the day, it's really just medicine. Good medicine. The kind that treats the whole person, not just the immediate problem. The kind that asks why problems exist instead of just addressing symptoms. The kind that recognizes that everyone, enemy soldier or allied civilian, deserves care when they need it. Maybe that's what makes humans different. Maybe we're just naturally inclined to help people who need help, regardless of the circumstances. Maybe we're naturally suspicious of systems that create problems instead of solving them. Maybe we're naturally motivated to address root causes instead of just treating symptoms. Or maybe we're just stubborn enough to keep trying even when everyone else thinks we're crazy. Either way, I've got patients to see tomorrow. The new class of students arrives next week, and I need to prepare my lecture on preventive care fundamentals. Rita's been complaining about the coffee machine again, so I should probably look into getting that fixed. You know, for someone who supposedly changed the galaxy, my to-do list is remarkably mundane. But that's okay. Mundane is good. Mundane means people are healthy enough to complain about coffee machines instead of fighting wars. And that's really all any medic can ask for. The end took her head. You realize Command is probably going to want to debrief you about this, right? They're calling it a new form of nonviolent conflict resolution. It's not nonviolent conflict resolution. It's just medicine. You convinced an enemy unit to withdraw from the field by making them worry about their health. That's either brilliant psychological warfare or the most aggressively helpful thing I've ever seen. Can't it be both? The real impact of the incident became clear 2 months later, when the Zephyrian Dominion issued new tactical guidelines for encounters with Terran medical personnel. The document, which was later leaked to the galactic press, included the following recommendations. Avoid direct contact with human medical personnel unless absolutely necessary. Do not make eye contact with humans carrying medical equipment. If approached by a human medic, immediately report any symptoms of illness or injury. Under no circumstances should personnel admit to having just a small headache or feeling a little tired. Emergency extraction protocols should be implemented if a human medic begins asking about family medical history. All personnel should ensure their medical records are up to date before deployment to avoid embarrassing questions during potential examinations. The guidelines were met with widespread ridicule from other species until similar incidents began occurring across the galaxy. The Rigelian Navy reported that their entire Third Fleet had been convinced to participate in a smoking cessation program after an encounter with a human medic who was concerned about their respiratory health. The Centauri Trade Federation noted that their merchant vessels had begun carrying emergency medical supplies after a human doctor had pointed out that their crews were showing signs of vitamin deficiency. Within a year, the Galactic Medical Association had to create a new classification system for what they termed aggressive preventive care incidents. The human medical community, meanwhile, remained baffled by the fuss. "We're just doing our jobs," Dr. Morrison explained to a reporter from the Galactic Health Network. "If someone needs medical attention, we provide it. That's what we do. But don't you think it's unusual to treat enemy soldiers? Enemy soldiers are still people. People get sick, people get injured, people need medical care. The politics of the situation don't change the biology. What about the tactical advantages? Some military analysts suggest that your methods could be used as a form of psychological warfare." Alex looked genuinely confused. "Psychological warfare? We're just trying to keep people healthy. But you've effectively neutralized enemy forces through medical intervention. We've helped people identify and address health issues that were affecting their quality of life. If that happens to make them less inclined to shoot at people, well, that's just a nice side effect." The truth was, Alex had never intended to become a tactical asset. He'd just wanted to help people, regardless of which side of the conflict they happened to be on. The fact that this approach had proved surprisingly effective at de-escalating military situations was something that still puzzled him. "I mean, it makes sense when you think about it," he explained to Captain Torres during one of their regular coffee meetings. Most conflicts are driven by fear, anger, and stress. Those are all things that can be addressed through proper medical care and lifestyle changes. You're saying wars are caused by poor health? I'm saying poor health doesn't help. When people are tired, stressed, and in pain, they're more likely to make bad decisions. Address the underlying health issues, and suddenly people are more willing to talk things through. So your solution to interstellar conflict is better healthcare? Among other things, yes. You'd be surprised how many problems can be solved with proper nutrition, adequate sleep, and regular exercise. Torres stared at him. You're serious? Completely. Look at Veltar. Once we addressed his digestive issues and got him on a better sleep schedule, he became much more reasonable. He's actually been sending me progress reports. Progress reports? His ulcer symptoms have completely resolved, and his stress levels are way down. He's even started a meditation group for his unit. A meditation group. Stress reduction is important for military personnel. High-stress environments can lead to all sorts of health problems if not properly managed. Torres rubbed her temples. Alex, do you realize you've essentially weaponized wellness? I've provided medical care to people who needed it. The fact that healthier people tend to be more rational and less aggressive isn't my fault. It's just biology. The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from command. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Zephyrian fleet approaching the system, and all medical facilities were being ordered to prepare for potential casualties. Looks like we might be getting busy, Torres said, checking her sidearm. Alex was already reaching for his medkit. I should start prepping the surgical bay. Alex, if this turns into a full-scale engagement, I need you to promise me you'll stay in the hospital. No running out to treat wounded soldiers in the middle of a firefight. I can't promise that. Alex, Rita, if people are hurt, I'm going to help them. That's what I do. That's what I'm afraid of. The Zephyrian fleet arrived 6 hours later, but instead of the expected orbital bombardment, they transmitted a single message. Request permission to dock for medical consultation. The message was signed by Fleet Admiral Kexthul, who had apparently been suffering from chronic back pain for the past several years. He'd heard about Dr. Morrison's success in treating similar conditions and was hoping to schedule an appointment. You see? Alex said to Torres as they watched the first shuttle load of Zephyrian officers disembark at the hospital's landing pad. Most problems really can be solved with proper medical care. This is insane, Torres muttered. We're about to provide enemy forces with comprehensive physical examinations. They're not enemy forces, they're patients. And technically, we're not at war with the Zephyrian Dominion anymore. Since when? Since Admiral Kexthul signed the non-aggression pact about 20 minutes ago. Apparently, he's been looking for an excuse to end hostilities. The back pain was just the last straw. Torres stared at him. You ended a war with physical therapy? I haven't done anything yet, but chronic pain can really affect someone's quality of life. It's no wonder he was making aggressive military decisions. He was probably in discomfort constantly. So you're saying his bad back made him invade 3-star systems? I'm saying chronic pain can affect judgment and decision-making. Address the pain and suddenly people are more inclined to consider diplomatic solutions. The next few days were some of the busiest in Field Hospital Charlie 7's history. What started as a single medical consultation turned into a comprehensive health assessment for the entire Zephyrian command structure. Alex found himself treating everything from stress-related digestive issues to vitamin deficiencies to chronic fatigue syndrome. You know, Admiral Kexthul said as Alex worked on his lower back, I cannot remember the last time I felt this good. That's what happens when you address the underlying causes instead of just treating the symptoms, Alex replied, adjusting the heat therapy unit. Your posture has improved significantly since we started the exercises. My staff has noticed. They say I seem more approachable. Chronic pain can make anyone irritable. You've probably been dealing with low-level discomfort for so long that you forgot what it felt like to be pain-free. Perhaps. I must admit the meditation techniques have been surprisingly effective. Stress reduction is important for everyone, but especially for people in leadership positions. The decisions you make affect thousands of people. You need to be operating at peak mental and physical condition. Kexthul considered this. Dr. Morrison, may I ask you something? Of course. Did you plan this? Alex paused in his work. Plan what? This. The medical intervention. The diplomatic resolution. Did you deliberately use healthcare as a form of conflict resolution? Admiral, I saw a person in pain and I offered to help. Everything else just sort of happened. That is what I was afraid you would say. Years later, the story of Dr. Alex Morrison and the great medical intervention became legend throughout the galaxy. Military academies began teaching Morrison protocols. Medical schools added courses in preventive diplomacy, and the phrase aggressive healthcare entered common usage as a term for conflict resolution through wellness. Alex himself remained at Field Hospital Charlie 7, treating patients and training students, still genuinely baffled by the fuss everyone made about basic medical care. The hospital had expanded into a full medical complex, complete with research facilities and a diplomatic annex where species could resolve conflicts through comprehensive health assessments. "You know," Rita said one day as they watched a group of former enemies sharing meditation techniques in the hospital garden, "I think you actually did it." "Did what?" Alex asked, checking his ever-present medkit. "Changed the galaxy, made it a healthier place." Alex shrugged. "People still get sick. They still get hurt. They still need help. But now they're more likely to ask for that help instead of shooting at each other first." "I suppose that's progress." "You suppose?" Rita laughed. "Alex, there hasn't been a major war in 3 years. The Galactic Health Initiative has prevented 17 conflicts through medical intervention. Half the galaxy's military officers are now certified in basic first aid because they're afraid of looking incompetent next to a human medic." Alex made a note on his datapad about ordering more antiseptic. "That's nice. Do we have enough supplies for tomorrow's clinic?" Rita shook her head, still smiling. "Never change, Doc, never change." As the twin suns set over Field Hospital Charlie 7, now officially designated as the Galactic Center for Medical Diplomacy, Alex Morrison finished his rounds, updated his inventory logs, and prepared for another day of doing what he'd always done, helping people who needed help. The fact that this simple approach had somehow revolutionized interstellar relations was, as he'd always maintained, just a happy side effect. Because at the end of the day, that's what medics do. They help people, no matter who they are, where they come from, or which side of the conflict they're on. And sometimes, just sometimes, that's enough to change the galaxy. The end. "You're telling me these primitive bipeds are our last hope? The ones who still get excited about controlled fusion and think quantum entanglement is spooky?" Admiral Zixtar clicked his mandibles in disbelief, the sound echoing through the command center of the Galactic Alliance flagship. Lieutenant Krell unfurled her sensory tendrils, a gesture that roughly translated to exasperation in most sectors of the galaxy. "With all due respect, Admiral, we're not exactly drowning in options here. The Vex Armada has blockaded every hyperspace route from Centaurus to the Cygnus Arm. Our forces are scattered, and these primitive bipeds have somehow managed to evade detection for centuries because the Vex considered their solar system too insignificant to monitor." Too insignificant. The Admiral's compound eyes dimmed momentarily, the equivalent of a bitter laugh. "How convenient for them." On the holographic display before them, a small blue-green planet rotated slowly, third from an unremarkable yellow star at the edge of a spiral galaxy. Earth. Population 9.7 billion. Technological advancement, pre-galactic. Political structure. Fractured nation-states with emerging global governance. Threat assessment according to standard Galactic Alliance protocols. Negligible. Except now negligible might just be their salvation. "Fine," Admiral Zixtar finally conceded. "Make contact. But I want it on record that I think this is absolutely ridiculous. These humans have barely left their own planet. What exactly do you expect them to contribute to a war that spans 17 galactic sectors?" Lieutenant Krell's skin flickered with bioluminescent patterns, her species' version of a knowing smile. "You might be surprised, Admiral. I've been studying their information networks. They have this curious concept called impossible odds. Apparently, they find them motivating." Dave Elliott was having a perfectly normal Tuesday morning when the aliens showed up. He'd just poured his second cup of coffee, the first having failed in its sacred duty to transform him from zombie to functioning adult, when his phone, laptop, television, microwave, and even his supposedly not connected to the internet alarm clock all simultaneously lit up with the same message. "Attention citizens of Earth, first contact protocol initiated. This is not a drill, hoax, viral marketing campaign, or particularly elaborate prank. Please stand by for important information." Dave stared at his devices, coffee mug suspended halfway to his lips. Well, that's new. He had approximately 47 seconds to contemplate whether this was a massive hack, the world's least subtle product launch, or the beginning of the apocalypse before the real show started. The message disappeared, replaced by the image of what could only be described as a jellyfish that had somehow evolved to have both a beak and what appeared to be extremely professional business attire. "People of Earth," the alien began, its beak moving in perfect sync with the translated words. I am Lieutenant Krell of the Galactic Alliance. We apologize for this unscheduled intrusion into your communications networks, but time is of the essence. The galaxy needs your help. Dave slowly placed his coffee mug on the counter, his brain still processing the fact that an alien squid in a spacesuit was interrupting what should have been a boring Tuesday. That's not a guy in a costume, is it? He muttered to himself. His question was promptly answered when the camera view pulled back to reveal a command center filled with an assortment of beings that would make the most creative Hollywood special effects team weep with inadequacy. Some had too many limbs, others too few. Some appeared to be made primarily of crystalline structures, while others seemed to be composed of living smoke. For over 3 centuries, the Galactic Alliance has maintained peace across known space, Lieutenant Krell continued. 2 standard galactic years ago, this peace was shattered by the emergence of the Vex Armada, a militaristic collective intent on subjugating all sentient life. Despite our technological advantages, we have been steadily losing ground. The Vex have developed countermeasures to our weapons, our shields, and our tactics. The image shifted to show massive, angular ships that somehow managed to look both mechanical and organic simultaneously, like someone had crossbred a stealth bomber with a particularly angry wasp nest. Our analysts have determined that the Vex have a critical weakness in their defense systems. Unfortunately, all Alliance species have neural structures that are immediately detected by Vex bioscanners. Your species, however, is unknown to them. Your neural patterns are distinct. Your technology, while primitive by our standards, operates on principles the Vex do not monitor. In short, you are invisible to them, a blind spot in their otherwise perfect surveillance. Dave found himself nodding along, as if an alien asking humanity to fight in an intergalactic war was a perfectly reasonable proposal that just needed a few clarifying questions. So, you want us to what? Build you some humans-only weapons? He asked his television, fully aware that talking back to a broadcast was ridiculous, but unable to stop himself. As if hearing his question, Lieutenant Krell continued. We need your assistance in deploying specialized countermeasures against Vex command ships. Your technological limitations are, paradoxically, your greatest strength in this conflict. The more primitive the technology, the more invisible it is to Vex detection systems. Dave couldn't help but laugh. Oh great, we're space hillbillies. They'll never see our rusty pickup trucks coming. The broadcast continued for another 15 minutes, detailing coordinates for meeting points, assurances that this was not an invasion, and instructions for world leaders to convene emergency sessions. By the time it ended, Dave had finished his coffee and come to the surreal conclusion that he might need to call in alien invasion to his workplace as a legitimate excuse for being late. He picked up his phone to do exactly that when it rang. The caller ID showed Global Emergency Alert, followed by a message that made his stomach drop. Attention, Dave Elliott. Your expertise has been identified as crucial report to Hangar 7, Edwards Air Force Base transport en route to your location. Estimated arrival, 12 minutes. Dave stared at the message in disbelief. My expertise? I design user interfaces for banking apps. What the hell do aliens want with... The rest of his protest was cut short by the distinctive whine of something very large and very fast descending outside his apartment building. Let me get this straight, Captain Alexis Wright said, her voice impressively steady given the circumstances. You infiltrated our global networks, identified key personnel from every field imaginable, abducted them. Expedited recruitment, Lieutenant Krell corrected. Abducted them, Wright insisted. Brought us to a secret military base, and now you're asking us to retrofit commercial spacecraft with improvised weapons to fight an alien armada? The briefing room at Edwards Air Force Base was packed with an eclectic mix of individuals. Military personnel, scientists, engineers, and, inexplicably to many, a number of people whose expertise seemed questionable at best in the context of intergalactic warfare. Dave sat in the back row, still trying to process how he'd gone from contemplating calling in sick to work to being part of Earth's apparent last line of defense against alien invaders. Next to him sat a woman who had introduced herself as Dr. Valentina Sokolov, quantum physicist, who appeared to be taking the situation in stride, and a teenager who'd only identified himself as Brody and claimed to be a champion drone racer. Admiral Zixtar stepped forward, mandibles clicking in what the humans were beginning to recognize as irritation. Captain Wright, perhaps I can clarify our position. The Vex Armada has destroyed or occupied 37 Alliance worlds. Their next target is the Proxima Centauri system, the closest star system to your own. Once they establish a foothold there, Earth will be detected, analyzed, and almost certainly deemed a threat to be eliminated preemptively. Why would they consider us a threat? A voice called from the crowd. You just spent 20 minutes explaining how primitive we are compared to you. Because The Admiral's voice took on a grim tone. The Vex eliminate any species with the potential for rapid technological advancement. And your species... He paused, mandibles clicking in what might have been reluctant admiration. Your species went from first-powered flight to landing on your moon in 66 years. That rate of development is unprecedented in galactic records. A murmur ran through the assembled humans. So we're too stupid to be useful, but too smart to be left alive? Dave muttered to no one in particular. That's actually pretty on brand for us. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles rippled. More accurately, Mr. Elliot, you exist in a unique sweet spot. Advanced enough to understand the principles of our technology. Primitive enough to be invisible to Vex detection systems, and adaptable enough to potentially make this insane plan work. Dave blinked. You can hear me from all the way up there? My species evolved as ambush predators in methane oceans with extreme pressure differentials. I can detect the movement of your blood cells from across this room. Lieutenant Krell's beak twisted in what might have been a smile. And to answer your earlier question, we need your expertise in human-machine interfaces because Alliance technology was not designed for human neurological and physiological patterns. You quite literally need a translator between your brains and our tech. Before Dave could process the implications of this, Captain Wright cut in again. That still doesn't explain the plan. You want us to fight the Vex with our primitive technology? Even our most advanced military hardware would be laughably outmatched. Admiral Zixtar's compound eyes gleamed. Not exactly, Captain. We want you to fight them with your primitive technology, powered by our energy systems. A fusion of approaches that the Vex algorithm cannot predict because it has never encountered such a combination. He gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the center of the room, showing what appeared to be a standard human spacecraft, similar to a SpaceX model, but with distinctly alien modifications that made it look like someone had grafted pieces of an advanced spacecraft onto a vintage car. We're calling it Project Trojan Horse, the Admiral continued. The Vex will detect our power signatures, but the human components will register as background noise or sensor ghosts. By the time they realize their error, it will be too late. A hand shot up from the middle of the room, a lanky man with wild hair who had been introduced as Dr. Emil Novak, demolitions expert. Quick question. What's stopping these Vex fellows from simply blasting our Trojan horses out of space the moment they see us coming? Lieutenant Krell's tentacles rippled in what the humans were learning to recognize as amusement. That's the beautiful part, Dr. Novak. They won't see you coming at all. Their detection systems are designed to identify advanced propulsion signatures, quantum-encrypted communications, and neural patterns common to known galactic species. Your vessels, propelled by our power sources but guided by your control systems and piloted by humans, will register as space debris or background radiation. Dave raised his hand, then awkwardly lowered it, realizing this wasn't a classroom. So we're basically space ninjas? Using our technological backwardness as camouflage? A crude but not inaccurate analogy, Mr. Elliot, Admiral Zixtar said, mandibles clicking rapidly, which Dave was starting to interpret as the alien version of a chuckle. Captain Wright, however, remained unconvinced. And once we're past their detection systems? What then? You expect us to take on warships with what, missiles? Lasers? The Admiral's compound eyes swiveled toward Dr. Novak. That's where your explosives expertise becomes relevant, Doctor. The Vex ships have one critical vulnerability, their central processor cores. Heavily shielded against energy weapons, but surprisingly vulnerable to kinetic impacts of sufficient force. Primitive explosives by our standards, but delivered with precision to exactly the right spot. Dr. Novak's face lit up with the universal expression of someone who has just been given permission to blow something up in the name of science. You're telling me we're going to save the galaxy with good old-fashioned bombs? Not fancy laser beams or antimatter warheads, but actual chemical explosives? Precisely. Well, Dr. Novak grinned. That's something I can work with. Dave leaned over to Dr. Sokolov. Is it just me, or does this plan sound like it was cobbled together by watching too many Earth movies? She shrugged. In quantum physics, we have a saying. If it's stupid but it works, it's not stupid. Pretty sure that's not a quantum physics saying. No, but it should be. She smiled. Besides, the fundamental concept is sound. The Vex have optimized their defenses against the known, the expected. They've created a system so advanced it has blind spots, gaps in perception where simpler approaches can slip through. Before Dave could respond, Lieutenant Krell's voice cut through the murmurs. We have 48 of your Earth hours before the Vex fleet enters the Proxima Centauri system. Once there, they will establish a forward base and begin systematic scans of nearby systems. including yours. We must strike before that happens. The room fell silent as the gravity of the situation sank in. Finally, Captain Wright spoke. 48 hours to prep an interstellar mission with untested hybrid technology, minimal training, and a ragtag crew? She let out a bark of laughter that held no humor. Well, I guess if we're going for so crazy it might work, we're starting strong. Admiral Zixtar's mandibles clicked solemnly. Captain Wright, I understand your skepticism, but I have studied your species' history. You have a remarkable tendency to perform at your best when faced with impossible odds and minimal preparation time. That's a diplomatic way of saying we're good at winging it, Dave muttered. Winging it, the Admiral repeated, the translation matrix struggling with the idiom. Yes. Your capacity for improvisation, for winging it, may well be the salvation of the galaxy. The next 43 hours passed in a blur of activity that defied all logic, safety protocols, and probably several laws of physics. Hangar 7 had been transformed into a chaotic blend of human and alien technology, with teams working around the clock to retrofit 12 Earth spacecraft, with Alliance power systems and weapons designed to bypass Vex defenses. Dave found himself at the center of what he had started calling the Translation Team, a group of UI designers, neuroscientists, and Alliance engineers working to create control systems that human pilots could use to operate the hybrid vessels. The problem, he explained to a bleary-eyed group during hour 37 of the prep, is that we're trying to create an interface between two completely different technological philosophies. Alliance tech is heavily integrated with their biology. It's intuitive for them because it was designed for their neural patterns. Our tech is external, mechanical, with deliberate barriers between user and system. Dr. Sokolov nodded, adding, and we need to preserve those barriers to maintain our invisibility to the Vex, while still allowing our pilots to access the full capabilities of the Alliance power systems. Exactly. Dave pointed to the prototype interface they'd cobbled together. A bizarre hybrid of holographic displays, mechanical controls, and neural feedback loops that looked like someone had welded parts from a fighter jet cockpit onto the bridge of a sci-fi spaceship. It's ugly as sin, but it should work. The Alliance systems think they're being operated by an Alliance pilot, while the human pilot is actually controlling everything through our interfaces. Dr. Emil Novak wandered over, his clothes covered in what appeared to be a combination of engine grease and an iridescent alien substance. How's the UI coming? Because I've got 12 hybrid warheads ready to go, and I'd prefer if the delivery system didn't crash before we can drop them off. Dave gave him a thumbs up. We're calling it the Babel Box. It's hideous but functional, like a website from the early 2000s, but it'll get the job done. Novak grinned. Good, because my babies are ready to dance. He patted the tablet he was carrying, which displayed schematics for what looked like standard Earth explosives that had been modified with alien technology in ways that made Dave's head hurt just looking at them. Please tell me those aren't going to blow up before we deliver them, Dave said. Almost certainly not, Novak replied cheerfully. The Alliance power cores give us about 1,000 times the yield of our best conventional explosives, all packed into something the size of a softball. One of these hits a Vex processor core, and boom, no more Vex ship. And if it hits literally anywhere else, then we've given the Vex a very expensive light show and probably made them very angry. Novak shrugged. Precision delivery is kind of the whole ballgame here. A loud clang from across the hangar drew their attention. Captain Wright was standing atop one of the retrofitted spacecraft, a modified SpaceX Starship that now bristled with alien technology in ways that somehow managed to look both advanced and like something assembled in someone's garage. Listen up, she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. Launches in 5 hours. I need all systems checks completed in 3, crew briefing in 4. If you're still attaching things with the space equivalent of bubblegum and prayers, now's the time to wrap it up. Dave turned back to his team. You heard the captain. Let's make sure our pilots can actually fly these contraptions without accidentally sending themselves into another dimension. As the team scattered to finalize their work, Lieutenant Krell approached, her tentacles moving in what Dave had learned was a pattern indicating concern. Mr. Elliott, a moment of your time? Dave nodded, setting down the tablet he'd been working on. What's up, Lieutenant? Having second thoughts about trusting the galaxy's safety to a bunch of primates with screwdrivers? The alien's beak twisted in what might have been a smile. On the contrary, I have been impressed by your species' ability to adapt to our technology. It would have taken an Alliance engineering team months to accomplish what you've done in days. Nothing motivates human innovation like an imminent apocalypse, Dave said. Plus, half of what we've done probably violates about a dozen safety protocols that Alliance engineers would have been too responsible to ignore. That is precisely my point, Krell said. Your willingness to take risks, to cut corners as you say, is both terrifying and exactly what this mission requires. Dave frowned. Why do I feel like there's a but coming? Lieutenant Krell's tentacles rippled.
The Admiral has received updated intelligence.
The Vex fleet has accelerated its approach to the Proxima Centauri system. They will arrive in approximately 7 of your Earth hours. But launch isn't for 5 hours, and we need at least another 3 hours of travel time to reach the intercept point, Dave said, the implications sinking in. We'll be cutting it too close. Correct. Which is why I've come to you. The alien's voice lowered. The Admiral believes we should abort the mission, withdraw Alliance forces, and prepare alternative defenses. Alternative defenses? You mean right off Earth as a lost cause? Lieutenant Krell's silence was answer enough. Dave ran a hand through his hair, mind racing. We need to launch now, not in 5 hours, now. The systems aren't fully tested. They never are. Dave cut her off. Look, I've been in software development for 15 years. You know what happens if you wait until everything is perfect? You never launch. Sometimes you have to push the button and fix the bugs in the first update. This isn't software, Mr. Elliot. If these ships fail, then we're no worse off than if we do nothing, Dave finished. But if they work, even partially, we have a chance. And a partial chance is better than no chance at all. Lieutenant Krell studied him for a long moment, her alien features unreadable. Finally, her tentacles settled into a pattern that Dave hadn't seen before. What does that mean? He asked, gesturing to her tentacles. It means, against my better judgment, I find your argument persuasive. She turned toward the command center. I will speak with the Admiral. Prepare your teams for immediate launch. As she glided away, Dave called after her. Lieutenant! What was that tentacle pattern just now? I haven't seen it in your emotional lexicon. She paused, turning back slightly. There is no direct translation. The closest would be, resigned to the inevitable chaos of working with humans. Dave grinned. You should add that one to the official Alliance dictionary. I have a feeling you'll be using it a lot. This is either the bravest or the stupidest thing I've ever done, Captain Wright muttered as she strapped herself into the pilot's seat of the lead ship, now unofficially christened Hail Mary by its crew. Beside her, Dr. Sokolov finished her own pre-flight checks on the jerry-rigged systems. In quantum mechanics, an action can be both until observed. Schrödinger's mission, if you will. Not helping, Doctor. Dave's voice came through the comms from Mission Control, where he was coordinating the interface systems across all 12 ships. All Babel boxes are online and functioning. Well, functioning as well as can be expected for something we invented 2 days ago. Very reassuring, Wright replied dryly. Status on the other ships? All reporting ready for launch. Doctor. Novak is aboard the Plan B with his team and the warheads. The rest of the ships have their designated payloads and teams. And our alien friends? Admiral Zixtar's voice cut in. Alliance command ship is maintaining position just beyond your moon's orbit. We will provide real-time intelligence and emergency extraction if necessary. If necessary, Wright repeated. Let's hope it isn't. All ships, final systems check. As the crews reported in, Dave watched from the makeshift mission control they'd established in Hangar 7. Around him, a mix of military personnel and Alliance advisors monitored the status of the hybrid vessels. Lieutenant Krell moved to stand beside him. Your species continues to surprise me, Mr. Elliot. Most civilizations would be paralyzed with fear at this point. Dave shrugged. Oh, we're terrified. We've just gotten really good at functioning while screaming internally. A useful adaptation. Plus, Dave added, humans have this weird quality where the more impossible something seems, the more some of us want to try it, just to prove it can be done. The alien's tentacles rippled in what Dave now recognized as amusement. The Admiral has a theory about your species. He believes you evolved this trait because your planet is unusually hostile by galactic standards. Earth? Hostile? Consider. Extreme temperature variations, multiple apex predators, regular natural disasters, constantly shifting terrain, and a remarkable variety of ways to die from microscopic organisms. Most evolved sentients come from much more stable environments. Dave laughed. So what you're saying is, we're Space Australia? Everything on our planet was trying to kill us, so we got weird and tough? Before Lieutenant Krell could respond, Captain Wright's voice came through the comms. All systems go. Initiating launch sequence. The hangar doors slid open, revealing the night sky above. One by one, the 12 retrofitted spacecraft rose on columns of flame that shifted from standard rocket exhaust to an eerie blue glow as the Alliance power systems engaged. Dave watched the monitors as the ships accelerated at a rate that should have been impossible for vessels of their size and construction. Another gift from Alliance technology. They're away, he reported, unable to keep the mix of awe and terror from his voice. Transit time to Proxima Centauri intercept point, 2 hours, 17 minutes. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles went still. The Vex fleet will arrive in 3 hours, 42 minutes. They will detect the Proxima system and begin their scans 1 hour after that. So our window is narrow, the alien finished. Extremely narrow. Dave nodded, eyes fixed on the tracking displays. Well, if there's one thing humans are good at, it's squeezing through narrow windows. Usually right at the last possible second, just to make it more dramatic. Is that supposed to be reassuring? Not really, Dave admitted, but it's kind of our thing. The journey to the intercept point was surprisingly uneventful, which Captain Wright found more unnerving than reassuring. The hybrid ships moved through space at speeds that Earth technology alone could never have achieved, guided by human hands through interfaces that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Status report, she called out as they approached the designated coordinates. Dr. Sokolov consulted the bizarre mashup of screens and holographic displays that constituted their navigation system. We're approaching the outer boundary of the Proxima Centauri system. All ships maintaining formation. No sign of Vex activity yet. In the cargo hold of the ship designated Plan B, Dr. Novak was making final adjustments to the hybrid warheads. Each one contained a core of Alliance energy technology surrounded by a shell of human-designed explosives, a combination that Alliance engineers had initially declared impossible until Novak demonstrated otherwise, with a test that had left a crater in the Nevada desert. "How are we doing back there, Doc?" Wright's voice came through the intercom. "Just giving my babies their pep talk," Novak replied, patting one of the warheads affectionately. "They're ready to meet their destiny." "Save the poetry for after we survive this," Wright replied. "We're reaching the deployment zone in 10 minutes. Aboard the Hail Mary, Captain Wright turned to her co-pilot, a young Air Force lieutenant named Dmitry Volkov, who had been selected for his experience with experimental aircraft. "Remember the plan," she said. "We stay dark until the last possible moment. No active scans, minimal communications. We're just space junk as far as the Vex are concerned." Volkov nodded, his hands hovering over controls that had been standard flight sticks 2 days ago, and now were integrated with alien technology in ways that defied easy explanation. "What if they do spot us?" he asked. "Then we deploy early and hope for the best," Wright answered. "But according to our alien friends, the Vex are creatures of pattern and prediction. They don't expect us, so they won't be looking for us. And we all know how reliable alien intelligence has been throughout human history," Volkov muttered, before adding hastily. "Fictional human history, I mean." Wright managed a tight smile. "Well, if they're wrong, we'll never know it. We'll just be space dust." The comms crackled to life with Admiral Zixtar's voice. "Alliance sensors have detected the leading edge of the Vex fleet entering the system. Estimate 63 of your minutes until they reach final position." "Copy that," Wright responded. "All ships maintain current trajectory and speed. Radio silence from this point forward unless absolutely necessary." As the minutes ticked by, tension built across the small fleet. The hybrid ships continued their approach, now moving on minimal power to reduce their signature even further. In mission control, Dave watched the sensor feeds with growing anxiety. "They're really cutting it close," he murmured. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles twisted in a pattern he now recognized as tension. "The Vex fleet is deploying faster than anticipated. Their advanced scouts will begin system scanning in approximately 47 minutes. And our ships reach deployment position in 39 minutes. Dave did the math. "That's an 8-minute window. Not exactly comfortable." Indeed. The displays showed the human fleet as small blue dots, moving steadily toward their target zone. The Vex fleet appeared as a spreading red cloud at the edge of the system, massive, organized, and utterly terrifying in its mechanical precision. "They really don't know we're coming, do they?" Dave asked, watching the Vex ships arrange themselves in a perfect geometric pattern for their system scan. "The concept of humans piloting spacecraft with Alliance technology is so far outside their predictive algorithms that they would dismiss it as a statistical impossibility," Lieutenant Krell replied. "It would be like expecting a Stone Age human to pilot a modern jet fighter." "Which is exactly what we're doing in relative terms," Dave pointed out. "Precisely why it might work." On the main view screen, the distance between the human fleet and the Vex armada continued to shrink. The Alliance command ship, hovering at the edge of Earth's solar system, relayed real-time updates on Vex movements and deployments. "Vex command ships are taking position," reported one of the Alliance officers. "They appear to be preparing for a standard sweep and clear operation." Admiral Zixtar's mandibles clicked rapidly. "They're deploying earlier than expected. Captain Wright must accelerate her approach." Dave keyed the secure channel. "Captain, be advised. Vex deployment has accelerated. Your window is shrinking." Wright's voice came back, tense but controlled. Copy that. Adjusting approach vector.
All ships increase power to 70%.
Let's hope they're as blind to us as we think they are. The blue dots on the display accelerated, closing the distance more rapidly now. The risk of detection increased with their speed, but it was a calculated risk, one they had no choice but to take. 30 kilometers to deployment zone, Dr. Sokolov reported aboard the Hail Mary. Vex fleet is establishing their scanning perimeter. Any indication they've spotted us? Wright asked. Negative, no change in their formation or activity. Wright allowed herself a small breath of relief. All ships, prepare for payload deployment. We hit them fast and scatter before they know what happened. In the Plan B, Dr. Novak finished his final checks on the warheads. Payloads are hot and ready. Just get us within range of their command processors. The minutes crawled by with excruciating slowness. In mission control, Dave found himself holding his breath as the human fleet entered the outer perimeter of the Vex deployment zone. They're in, he whispered, and the Vex aren't reacting. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles undulated slowly. Remarkable. Your ships are registering as nothing more than orbital debris to their sensors. Space junk for the win, Dave muttered. Then louder. Captain, you are clear to proceed with deployment. Vex ships remain unaware. Aboard the Hail Mary, Captain Wright nodded to Volkov. Initiate final approach. All ships prepare to deploy on my mark. The 12 human vessels adjusted their course, each one targeting a specific Vex command ship. The hybrid engines operated at minimal power, pushing the ships forward on what appeared to be simple momentum to any watching sensors. Range to target 15 kilometers, Sokolov reported. 12, 10, stand by for deployment, Wright ordered. At precisely 8 kilometers, Wright gave the command. Deploy payloads, now! Across all 12 ships, specialized launch tubes ejected their cargo. The hybrid warheads developed by Dr. Novak, each one targeted at the vulnerable processor cores of the Vex command ships. Payloads away, Wright confirmed. All ships, full reverse thrust and evasive maneuvers on my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark! The human ships suddenly flared to life, Alliance power systems engaging at full capacity as they executed a maneuver that would have been impossible with Earth technology alone. A complete reversal of direction coupled with a random scatter pattern designed to confuse any targeting systems that might lock onto them. In mission control, Dave watched as the deployed warheads, appearing as tiny green dots on the display, continued on their trajectory toward the Vex ships. The Vex are still not reacting, Lieutenant Krell observed, her tentacles writhing with what might have been excitement. The warheads are registering as natural space debris. Time to impact? Admiral Zixtar demanded. 47 seconds, one of the Alliance officers reported. And time until the Vex complete their deployment and activate full scanning protocols? 52 seconds. The Admiral's compound eyes glittered. It's going to be very, very close. Dave keyed the comms again. Captain, be advised, you have approximately 40 seconds until impact. Vex will activate full scanning in approximately 45 seconds. Copy that, Wright's voice came back. All ships are executing evasive withdrawal. Dr. Novak reports all payloads are on target and armed. The tension in mission control was palpable as they watched the final approach of the warheads. The Vex ships maintained their precise formation, utterly oblivious to the threat bearing down on them. 30 seconds to impact, Dave counted down. 20, 10. And then, with sudden and terrifying clarity, the display showed the Vex ships beginning to move, breaking their formation and accelerating. They've detected the warheads! Lieutenant Krell exclaimed, her tentacles flaring wide in alarm. Impossible. Admiral Zixtar's mandibles clicked furiously. Their sensors shouldn't— 5 seconds to impact, Dave interrupted. Captain, the Vex are moving! Too late for them, Wright's voice came back, a hint of grim satisfaction evident even through the static. Novak's babies are locked on. The display erupted in a cascade of light as the first warhead made contact with its target, a Vex command ship at the center of their formation. For a split second, nothing happened. Then, a pulse of energy rippled outward, visible even on the sensors as a shockwave of disruption that tore through the ship's structure. Direct hit, someone shouted in mission control. One by one, the remaining warheads found their marks. Some of the Vex ships had begun evasive maneuvers, but the simple ballistic trajectory of the human weapons, coupled with their near invisibility to Vex sensors, made them almost impossible to avoid at such close range. Each impact resulted in the same distinctive energy pulse, followed by cascading system failures across the targeted ships. The precise combination of Alliance energy technology and human explosives created a reaction that overwhelmed the Vex processors exactly as Dr. Novak had predicted. 8 hits confirmed, reported an Alliance officer. 9, 10. The last two warheads missed their primary targets as the Vex ships executed desperate evasive maneuvers. But even 10 strikes out of 12 was beyond anything the Admiral had dared to hope for. The Vex command structure is in disarray, Lieutenant Krell announced, her tentacles writhing in what was unmistakably excitement. Their network is failing! On the main display, the remaining Vex ships began moving erratically, their perfect formation dissolving into chaos. Without their command ships to coordinate their actions, the individual vessels reverted to basic programming, and that programming did not account for attacks from supposedly primitive species using hybrid technology. All ships, report status, Dave called over the comms. Captain Wright's voice came through first. Hail Mary is intact and withdrawing at full speed. Minor damage from debris, but systems are functional. One by one, the other ships reported in. All 12 had survived the initial engagement, though several had sustained damage from proximity to the explosions or from debris. The Vex fleet is retreating, Admiral Zixtar announced, his mandibles clicking rapidly in what Dave had learned was his species' equivalent of astonished laughter. They're actually retreating, the display confirmed his words. The remaining Vex ships were pulling back, abandoning their planned sweep of the Proxima Centauri system in favor of a defensive regrouping. Did we just win? Dave asked, hardly daring to believe it. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles formed a pattern he hadn't seen before. Something complex and beautiful. Not the war, Mr. Elliot. But this battle, yes, decisively. Admiral Zixtar turned to address the mission control team. The Vex will analyze this defeat. They will adapt their sensors, adjust their tactics. But it will take time. Time the Alliance desperately needed. And in that time we can prepare further surprises for them. With all due respect, Admiral, Dave said. I think I've had enough surprises for 1 week. The Admiral's compound eyes fixed on him. Then you may want to cover your auditory organs, Mr. Elliot, because I'm about to deliver another one. He paused, mandibles clicking softly. The Galactic Alliance would like to formally invite Earth to join as a probationary member. Your species has proven itself unexpectedly valuable. A stunned silence fell over mission control, broken only when one of the military officers let out a whoop of celebration that quickly spread throughout the room. Dave turned to Lieutenant Krell. Is he serious? The Admiral, I mean. Her tentacles rippled in amusement. Entirely serious. Though I should warn you, Alliance bureaucracy makes your Earth governments look efficient by comparison. The paperwork alone might take decades. That's not what I expected to be worried about when discussing joining a galactic civilization, Dave admitted. The universe is full of surprises, Mr. Elliot. 3 months later, Dave found himself back at Edwards Air Force Base, though under very different circumstances. Hangar 7 had been transformed from a chaotic emergency workshop into a permanent facility dedicated to Human Alliance technological collaboration. The translation interface is coming along nicely, Dr. Sokolov said, gesturing to the latest version of what had once been called the Babel Box, and was now officially designated the Human Alliance Neural Interface System, though everyone still called it the Babel Box behind the bureaucrats' backs. Much more elegant than our first attempt, Dave agreed. Though I still think the holographic controls could use some work. The response time is laggy. That's because you're thinking in human terms, came a familiar voice. Dave turned to see Lieutenant Krell gliding toward them, her tentacles arranged in the pattern he now recognized as friendly greeting. Lieutenant, I didn't know you were back on Earth. I returned yesterday with the Admiral. The Alliance Council has approved the next phase of our collaboration. Dave raised an eyebrow. Let me guess. They want us to jury-rig more Earth tech with Alliance power systems to confuse the Vex? Actually, Lieutenant Krell's beak twisted in what he'd learned was her version of a smile. They want to incorporate human design principles into Alliance technology. Your species' approach to problem-solving has proven illuminating. You mean our habit of duct-taping solutions together and hoping for the best? I mean your ability to find unconventional solutions, precisely because you don't know what's supposed to be impossible. She gestured to the modified spacecraft nearby, where Dr. Novak was working with a team of engineers. The Vex have begun adapting their sensors to detect our hybrid vessels. Doctor. Novak's team is already developing countermeasures that no Alliance engineer would have considered. Dave smiled. Yeah, he's talking about something involving actual physical chaff, like metal strips, combined with Alliance phase-shifting technology. Says it'll make our ships look like quantum confetti to Vex sensors. Will it work? No idea, but that's never stopped us before. Captain Wright joined them, now wearing a new uniform patch that featured Earth alongside the symbol of the Galactic Alliance. Lieutenant, good to see you. I assume you're here for the demonstration? Demonstration? Dave asked. Wright grinned. The first squadron of fully integrated hybrid fighters is ready for a test flight. Alliance power systems, human controls, and a few special modifications courtesy of Dr. Novak and his team. The Admiral is particularly interested in what you call Plan B, Lieutenant Krell added. Dave laughed. Of course he is. Aliens travel across the galaxy with technology centuries beyond ours. And what impresses them most is our backup plans for when everything goes wrong. It's not just that. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles formed a thoughtful pattern. It's your species' fundamental understanding that things will go wrong, and your preparation for that inevitability. Most Alliance species evolved in environments stable enough that they developed a belief in perfect solutions. Humans know better. So we're teaching advanced aliens the value of expecting disaster? Dave shook his head. That's actually pretty on brand for humanity. Indeed. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles rippled with amusement. The Admiral has a saying now, borrowed from your Earth languages. For elegant problems, consult the Merivians. For elegant solutions, consult the Tharex. For inelegant problems with no elegant solutions, call a human. Captain Wright laughed. I'll take that as a compliment. As you should, Lieutenant Krell said. The Vex believed help would never arrive for the Alliance because they calculated all possible responses from known species. They never accounted for humans. Dave smiled. So we're the galaxy's wild card? More than that, Mr. Elliot. You're the storm no one saw coming. Lieutenant Krell's tentacles formed the now familiar pattern of respect. And the galaxy is better for it. Outside, the first squadron of Earth Alliance hybrid fighters rose into the clear blue sky, their engines flaring with a distinctive blue-white glow that was neither fully human nor fully alien technology, but something new, something unexpected. Just like humanity itself. The end.